If you're seeing this, your soul is done with the old timeline. You may have felt that sentence like a nudge against the ribs, sharp, unobtrusive, impossible to ignore. That small electric feeling is the doorway. Not accident, not mere curiosity. A threshold that was crossed quietly, from the inside out. You were given an early notice. The universe did not need to shout. It whispered, and you leaned in. Name what's happening. You are restless in rooms that once felt like home. Conversations that used to feel effortless now scrape at something deep and private. The routines that built the architecture of your identity, the roles, the habits, the who you are you learned to carry, have begun to loosen at the seams. There are mornings you wake and the person you used to be feels like a character in an old photograph, familiar but not yours. This is not failure. It is not a breakdown. It is the erosion phase doing its honest work. You may feel a hollowing out before fullness, as if the inside of you is being cleared to make room for a different kind of light. Old responses that once protected you, automatic defenses, reflexive explanations, the scripts that saved you from discomfort, are no longer adequate. They start to rattle. Sometimes they fall away noisily, sometimes they slide off in silence. Either way, the outcome looks the same. The container you relied on is becoming porous. Here's the first clarity to hold. The shift is not a punishment. It is an invitation. You are not being taken from your life. You are being invited into a life that better holds the truth of you. If this is touching something true inside, pause for a moment and take a breath. Notice where tension lives in your body right now. Your chest, your throat, the place behind your eyes. If you felt that, if the breath altered something even slightly, it's an alignment. If you want, type one word in your mind or in the comments, ready. This message is a permission and a map. Stay with it. The activation usually begins small. It can appear as a restlessness that has no clear object, a buzzing, a sense of low-grade discontent that your mind tries to explain away with tasks and to-do lists. Or it's a seed of recognition that something else is possible, an unnameable pull like a compass needle shivering toward north. You might notice your inner voice getting louder. A soft directive that used to be faint now has more volume, more weight. The future self begins to speak with a familiarity that feels like home. You might also feel micro winds of clarity, tiny confirmations that land like pebbles in a still pond. A phrase in a song that slices through your fog. A book that opens exactly where you need it. A person who appears briefly and disappears, but in their passing leaves a mirror. These are not coincidences. They are the first pattern of a new arrangement. They tell you that something has begun to tune. As the inner frequency shifts, the old timeline starts to erode. This is not instant. It is a steady wearing away. The edges soften. Interests that once defined your choices dim. People who used to anchor you begin to feel like they belong to the version of you that is passing. You might notice a strange impartiality, neither hatred nor grand love, just a quiet recognition that the fit is gone. It can feel like grief because part of your life is being acknowledged as past. Grief is appropriate. Honor it. Let it move through you. During this erosion, memories often rise to the surface as if being sifted. Not only the big, obvious moments, but small, overlooked fragments. A childhood smell, a passing glance from someone who never understood you, a decision you made to keep peace instead of truth. These memories are not punishments. They are information. Material you can use to understand what patterns you inherited and what you now choose to leave behind. When those memories come up, do not be alarmed by their emotional charge. Lean into the release. Allow tears, anger, laughter, whatever comes, to pass through rather than settle into another layer of armor. You may also notice an odd oscillation. Clarity one moment, confusion the next. This is normal. The psyche resists change while the soul calls for it. Think of it as retuning an instrument. You cannot sharpen a string without tension. You cannot find a new pitch without discomfort. The void, the place people fear most, is not a vacuum of loss, but a sacred, clean space awaiting new architecture. The void opens differently for everyone. For some of you, it arrives as a sudden quieting of the mental chatter. The usual commentary thins out and leaves a clear space of listening. For others, it's a kind of intelligible boredom. Your nervous system has finally given up on the old stimuli and asks for deeper input. In that emptiness, you may feel naked and small. This is the ground where redesign occurs. Treat it like an atelier where the new life is being patterned. Do not rush to fill the void with substitutes. Our species is averse to silence because silence forces us to meet ourselves. You may be tempted to distract, to seek company that masks the inner gap, to plunge into new projects as a form of avoidance. These are natural impulses. Notice them without judgment and, if you can, choose different. A short dedication to stillness, 10 minutes of unadorned sitting, a slow walk without your phone, does more work than frantic replanning ever will. The space is sacred preparation, not a problem to fix. As the void settles, your intuition begins to sharpen. The inner compass that was once operating in whispers starts to provide clearer signals, small promptings, unbidden mental images, a sensation of contraction or expansion tied to decisions. You will begin to recognize a tone in the guidance, a sense of ease when you are aligned, a constriction when you are not. Practice listening to the body's shorthand. The chest expansion is an unmistakable yes. The gut pull may be caution. Name them. Let them be your tools. There is a subtle but crucial distinction. Intuition is not always an imperative. It is rarely a command. It offers nudges, textures of knowing, rather than prescriptive instructions. It will not always say, "Do this now." More often, it will provide a feeling and leave the next steps to you. Cultivate patience with its timing. Maturity in this phase is learning to move in accordance with the inner voice without demanding that it justify itself to the ego. As your inner authority strengthens, you will notice the outer world beginning to mirror that change, but not immediately and not in the way your old mind expects. Synchronicities, those oddly timed little alignments, start appearing as signposts. A message across social media, an unexpected email, a conversation that shifts in tone. These are the universe's flint strikes. They do not guarantee outcome. They are invitations to test the resonance. Does this new option vibrate with your inner yes, or is it another echo of old patterns? Expect some dissolving relationships. This is a hard truth wrapped with kindness. When your frequency changes, not everyone around you will be able to hold the new field. Some relationships will show their limits. Boundaries that were previously invisible will become visible. You might experience a period where a friend grows distant, or a colleague's behavior becomes abrasive. Resist the urge to fix others to fit your evolution. Instead, respect the integrity of each person's path. You may gently step back from connections that no longer nourish you, or you may find new ways to relate that reflect your emerging center. At the same time, new threads begin to form, thin at first, like spider silk across the void, connecting you to people and places that match the texture of your newness. These connections may not look like obvious opportunities at first. They might arrive as a resonant phrase from a stranger, a creative collaboration hatched in a coffee shop, or a mentor who appears precisely when your questions finally have language. Notice the quality of these alignments more than their immediate outcome. They are coherence in formation. Acceleration happens when enough inner coherence meets outer permissibility. It does not mean life becomes effortless, nor does it mean you will be free from contradiction. Instead, acceleration is the phase where your internal orientation begins to move the field around you with greater speed. Decisions that once took months now become clear in a matter of days. Actions that were previously stuck find a smoother path. This is not magic in the cheap sense. It is the physics of alignment. Coherent intention plus aligned action equals a shift in probability. But be careful about expecting acceleration to feel like a sudden, glamorous transformation. For many people, it is quiet, an increase in momentum rather than a seismic rupture. For others, it may appear as a rapid series of adjustments, small opportunities that align one after another, nudging you into a new arrangement. Both are valid. What matters is the internal tone. Are you moving from a place of integrity and inner authority, or from fear and franticness? The former yields lasting stabilization. The latter creates temporary fixations. Stabilization is not a final destination, but a sweet point of balance. It is the moment when your new frequency has anchored sufficiently to sustain ongoing choices that feel natural and true. In stabilization, the future self's voice becomes steady and familiar, and you no longer doubt whether you are living in your own skin. The old timeline's gravitational pull grows weaker. You will no longer instinctively revert to reactive patterns. Instead, you carry a gentler clarity and a steadier sense of direction. Even as you arrive into stabilization, remember that timelines are not static. Life continues to evolve, and you will be called again and again to step into expanded versions of yourself. That is the design. Evolution is iterative. Each done with the old timeline moment prepares you for the next one. So how do you move through this with grace? A few navigational tools will support your passage. First, prioritize listening over planning. Planning has its place, but it can also be a form of control for an ego that is anxious about ambiguity. The invitation here is to balance thoughtful action with receptive presence. When choices arise, take a moment and ask, what does my body say? Where is the subtle expansion? Let the feeling lead the action. Second, practice small, regular acts of clearing. This does not need to be grand. It can be as simple as 30 minutes of solitude without screens, writing 3 unsparing lines each morning about what you are ready to release, or a nightly ritual of naming one thing that no longer serves you. Consistency compounds. The daily care you give to the inner field makes the larger shifts manageable. Third, honor boundaries kindly. As your container reconfigures, you will need to recalibrate who and what you allow into your space. Boundaries are not punishments, they are clarifications. A boundary can be a soft refusal, an honest conversation, or simply choosing to spend less time in certain places. You may later find that some boundaries are temporary. Treat them like scaffolding rather than permanent walls. Fourth, notice and track synchronicities without fetishizing them. Keep a small journal, 3 lines a day, to note the surprising alignments, repeating numbers, or anomalous meetings. Over time, patterns emerge. Those patterns are data. Use them as friendly confirmations, not as a dependence upon external validation. Fifth, be gentle with the pace. Your nervous system will have times of acceleration and times of contraction. Both are necessary. You do not need to be productive about your healing. Give yourself permission for spaciousness. The soul's timeline moves according to readiness, not urgency. There will be moments that test your patience. Old identity, when left unattended, has a way of resurfacing with nostalgia and persuasive rhetoric. It will remind you of what was comfortable or socially legible. When it does, smile inwardly and remind yourself, grief and nostalgia are not regression. They are part of the folding process, the way the past gets repackaged to make place for the future. And then there is the future self, the one who has already integrated the changes you are moving toward. You may not see this future self as a fully formed being. More often, you sense it in whispers, an image, a mood, a certain posture. Learn to converse with that presence. Ask simple questions. What next step can I take right now that honors truth rather than fear? What is the smallest choice that will move me toward coherence? The answers will be modest, an email, a gentle conversation, a creative attempt. And that is exactly how the new world constructs itself, brick by modest brick. As your inner authority matures, you may experience tests. Life will bring back familiar triggers so you can respond differently. These tests are not malice, they are calibration points. When an old story attempts to rewrite you, practice responding with new language. We do not become new by erasing the past, but by learning to translate it through a wiser heart. At the edge of this phase, you will notice a peculiar feeling that I want you to watch for. An internal coherence that feels like a quiet conspiracy between your body and your soul. It's a sensation of alignment that does not require proof. It is a knowing that is not loud but luminous. When this coherence is present, choices become less about forecasting outcomes and more about honoring integrity. You will know when something matches because it feels like coming home before you arrive. Soon after coherence becomes recognizably steady, the outer field begins to respond more visibly. Invitations show up that match not just your desires, but the level of your inner maturity. People who carry complementary frequencies begin to appear. Opportunities may feel surprising, but surprising in the way a plant senses a new break in the soil. Natural, inevitable, and a little miraculous without being impossible. Be mindful, however, of the subtle temptation to equate external success with spiritual validation. Do not allow outward evidence to be the sole measure of your progress. Stabilization is internal first. The world will catch up in time. Let external alignment be confirmation, not currency. There is also a sacred shadow to this work, the risk of spiritual bypassing. It is easy to mistake spiritual language for progress and use it to avoid necessary human work. You can say the right phrases, hold the correct posture, and still avoid the tender, difficult labor of integrating past wounds. True transformation asks for both upward reaching and downward clearing. It is depth plus ascension. You might be wondering, how soon will the external manifestations begin to feel tangible? The honest answer is, it depends. Timing is not the point of control here. The point is readiness and inner coherence. Do the alignment work, and the field will rearrange with a rhythm that fits both you and the world around you. At this point in the journey, you may experience a peculiar mix of impatience and reverence. You want to step forward now. And at the same time, you understand the need for patient cultivation. This is a fertile tension because it keeps you both motivated and humble. Lean into it without forcing. If you are moving through these stages, you might be feeling an increased sensitivity to energetic dynamics. You notice how certain places sap you, an environment, a conversation, an app. You also notice where you feel spacious and expanded. This discernment is golden. Use it. Optimize your surroundings in small ways. More light, less clutter, a playlist that helps you breathe, a regular time to walk outside. These are not trivial adjustments. They are the architecture of a field that supports the new timeline. You may also encounter people who attempt to convince you your experience is a phase, or to rescue you back into older narratives. Their intentions may be good, rooted in fear and love. You can respond with compassion without taking on the work of convincing them. Keep your inner faculty clear. Their skepticism is about them, not you. As the world begins to match your inner shift, you will be offered chances to declare your new alignment. These do not have to be grand outerness. They can be small acts of integrity that nevertheless mark a transition. Maybe you begin to speak differently in meetings. Maybe you shift how you structure your days. Maybe you spend more energy on curiosity than on proving competence. Each quiet declaration is a stitch in the tapestry of a new life. Now, as your activation deepens and the erosion clears, the void gives way to more frequent intuitive nudges, and synchronicities increase. There is an opening to make a conscious claim. This claim is not a magic spell. It is a ritual of accountability between you and your future self. The declaration is simple, symbolic, and entirely optional. It helps to anchor intent in language and action. If you feel this resonance, if your chest expands when you imagine stepping fully into a new narrative, if the word ready lights up inside you, then you might choose to make a small, present tense declaration now. Speak it aloud or say it quietly to yourself. You can use these words if they fit. I step into the reality that was waiting for me. Say them slowly. Let the sounds settle in your body. Notice what shifts beneath the ribs when you claim that line. This declaration is not a guarantee of specific outcomes. It is a personal seal that clarifies your orientation. It does not obligate the universe to serve you, nor does it exempt you from the labor of integration. What it does is mark your intention and invite your nervous system to align with possibility. After you make this small claim, listen for the next quiet directive. It may be to rest, to write, to reach out, to refuse. Let action follow intuition. Start small. Integrity is built in the tiny steps. You are being chosen, not because you are better than anyone else, but because your willingness has matched an opening. The universe does not pick favorites. It responds to readiness. That is the secret. Availability is the electromagnet of change. Your openness, not your perfection, draws the field. There will be tests ahead. The outer acceleration phase will press you for consistency. Old patterns will ask to be retried in their familiar costume. When they do, remember that you have rehearsed a new response in the silence of the void. Trust that rehearsal. Move with a gentle firmness. Protect your field with clarity, not with armor. And now, a small practical step before we go deeper. Take a moment to notice 3 things that felt different in the last week. Name 1 fear that surfaced and 1 small action you could take that aligns with the new feeling you're carrying. You do not need to execute all actions immediately. Choose 1, the smallest, and hold it as a commitment to your future self. Listen to the tone of your inner voice. It is changing from tentative to steady. You are learning a new grammar of choice, one that favors authenticity over approval, alignment over momentum for momentum's sake. The old timeline stories will shout sometimes. Let them. You do not need to answer every voice. As you prepare for what comes next, notice how the edges of your life begin to rearrange themselves. Invitations you never imagined will show up and require a rapid discernment. People whose frequency complements yours will become more available. Doors you once thought were closed will appear ajar. The acceleration is a rhythm that demands a new kind of agility, soft, responsive, grounded. Keep tending your inner field. The work ahead is less about dramatic reinventions and more about daily fidelity, a small practice of clarity, an honest conversation, a refusal to repeat old patterns. You were not chosen to escape difficulty. You were chosen to evolve through it. And when you feel doubt, remember this. Your experience right now is the proof of an interior reorientation. The rest will follow in due time, shaped by both your readiness and the world's choreography. Claim your posture. You are willing, you are listening, you are stepping. If that sentence landed and you felt a quiet tightening of hope rather than a burst of certainty, hold both. Hope without delusion. Readiness without haste. The new timeline is not a finish line you sprint toward. It is a way of being that you practice in the small acts, the honest conversations, the silent mornings. If you felt resonance with this message, and if you want to anchor that feeling even more deliberately, you can declare, out loud or quietly to yourself, these words as an intention. I step into the reality that was waiting for me. Use them as medicine. Repeat them when fear returns. Let them be a soft vow between you and the future self who already smiles back. The moment after this declaration is the most instructive. Do not expect fireworks. Expect the next task. Expect the next subtle confirmation. Expect patience from yourself. The acceleration you have been moving toward will come as a series of alignments, some obvious, some so subtle you almost miss them. Your job in the coming days is simple and radical at once. Notice, choose, act in accordance with your inner yes. Right now, at this cusp, you may sense the world holding its breath, as if waiting for you to shift your posture. There is a palpable tension between the old and the new, between what was safe and what is true. That tension is fertile. Lean into it without forcing resolution. The next phase will require you to remain rooted in the body while engaged with the imaginal. Soon, invitations will arrive that require a quickness of discernment and a steadiness of heart. Some will be tests of alignment. Do you choose what feels easy and familiar, or do you choose what resonates with the deeper yes? The field will not always be clear. Sometimes the right decision looks like a risk. That is because risk and growth are often indistinguishable in the beginning. You are not alone in this threshold. Even though the experience is intimate and solitary at times, you walk it in a lineage of people who have learned to trust inner guidance before the world validated their choices. They felt the pull, honored it, and acted with humility. They did not always get neat outcomes. They did, however, gain coherence. That is the real measure. Hold the thought that you were chosen to feel first. The universe gave you early information so that you could move with more grace and less damage. Use the advantage wisely. Keep your empathy intact for those who have not yet heard the whisper. And keep your courage intact for the moments when choosing the new timeline requires you to stand differently in your life. The next movement will ask you for one thing above all: fidelity to your inner witness. When life offers you a narrative that contradicts the witness, prefer the witness. This is not arrogance, it is stewardship. You are stewarding a possibility that was given to you, a possibility that asks for tenderness, intelligence, and patience. There is more to unfold. Already the field is rearranging in ways both subtle and unmistakable. Your readiness has called a new arrangement into being. The acceleration will arrive on its own timetable, shaped by choices you will make, by the people who show up, and by the integrity you maintain in the small things. Step forward with gentleness and resolve. Your soul is done with the old timeline. You were chosen to know it before the world told you, so you could move with less harm and more grace. Keep leaning into the inner whispers, keep tending the void, and keep making small declarations of intent. The next chapter waits, quiet at first, then insistent. Your task now is to be awake enough to notice when the first door opens. The next chapter waits, quiet at first, then insistent. Your task now is to be awake enough to notice when the first door opens. There are practical ways to keep your attention tuned without turning it into a project. Think small and steady. Begin by learning the language of your own nervous system. It is the translator between the soul's subtlety and the world's blunt instruments. Notice the micro movements, the slight relaxation behind your collarbones when a thought is true, the way your shoulders tighten at familiar stories, the barely audible inhale that precedes a yes. Train yourself to be curious about those micro movements. Curiosity softens judgment and opens a responsive field. Create a soft morning architecture. This is not a performance of holiness, it is a containment for attention. Spend 5 minutes upon waking with a question, not a plan. A question like, what wants my attention today? Or, what small step honors the person I am becoming? Ask it out loud or write it down, and then listen. The response will rarely be a grand strategy. It will be a small gesture, a sentence to craft, a call to return, a pause before answering. Follow that hint and note what shifts. Journal with a new economy. Less analysis, more inventory. Keep 3 columns. What felt heavy today? What felt luminous? One tiny thing you did that aligned with the luminous feeling. Over weeks, this ledger becomes a map of where your energy flows and where the old timeline still asserts gravity. You begin to see patterns, not for the purpose of new rules, but to inform wise choices. When decisions arise, practice a brief ritual of alignment instead of a frantic weighing of pros and cons. Place a hand on your chest. Breathe slowly 3 times. Ask the body to speak. Name whatever sensation arrives: warmth, tightness, openness, and treat that naming as data. If the feeling expands, you may move forward. If it contracts, delay with dignity. Delaying is not cowardice. It is calibration. The world you are stepping into rewards discernment. You do not have to have all the answers before taking a single aligned step. Hold loosely to outcomes. One of the subtlest traps in this work is to convert spiritual sensitivity into a forecast machine, expecting the internal shift to produce neat external payments on a ledger. That approach turns the soul's tender navigation into a transaction. Instead, treat outward results as echoes, useful information, not the prize. This reduces the franticness that can creep in when acceleration seems slow. Quiet persistence and integrity will compound in the field long before the visible proof arrives. Protect your capacity by tending to the basics of embodiment: sleep, hydration, daylight, movement. These are not incidental supports. They are sacred infrastructure. A nervous system that is exhausted or underfed cannot differentiate subtle signals. When you are rested, the inner voice has room to speak without being drowned by cortisol. When you move, you circulate stuck affect. When you are in light, perception widens. Small bodily courtesies are also practices of allegiance to the new timeline. Relationships will be one of your most active laboratories. You will face invitations to explain yourself, to translate your interior work for people who are not in the same room. You do not owe exhaustive explanations. There are 2 conversational postures that serve you: clarity and curiosity. Clarity pulls the outline of what you need: more time, fewer critiques, different rhythms. Curiosity asks about the other's experience. Both maintain connection without dissolving your edge. Some people will close the distance and step into the new field with you. Others will gently drift away. Let both be true. Maintain compassion for what others cannot hold while preserving tenderness for your own unfolding. Practice the gentle art of refusal. Saying no is not a wound you inflict. It is a boundary that creates room for deeper yeses. Test the muscle with small things: 1 extra meeting, a social invitation that drains you, and observe the relief that follows. Refusal will not sever every relationship. In many cases, it clarifies them. People often respond to honesty with more respect than to evasive acquiescence. Consider refusal part of your stewardship of energy. There will be times when you feel alone in the shift. Social media can exaggerate that loneliness by presenting curated advances of others. When you encounter images of apparent ease or sudden success, notice the story your mind writes and translate it back into compassion for yourself. You are not failing when life appears slower for you. The inner season you are in is not about keeping pace with anyone else. Comparison is a backward-facing lens. It contracts your field. Reorient toward curiosity about the shape of your own process. Use your imagination as a rehearsal tool. The future self is not an abstract ideal. It is an operative frequency you can visit and learn from. Close your eyes for a minute and imagine the person you are becoming. Posture, tone of voice, how they treat themselves, how they set priorities. Notice how they handle conflict, how they rest. Invite them to sit down across from you and ask a single question. What is the most faithful thing I could do right now? Listen for a practical answer, often modest, and commit to it. Embodied rehearsal trains the nervous system to accept new behavior as possible. Balance receptivity with agency. There is a sweet intelligence in allowing the field to move while still making decisive small choices. Receptivity without action becomes passivity. Action without receptivity becomes force. The alchemy here is to act from the inner yes rather than from scarcity or desperation. Ask, does this choice expand me or constrict me? If it expands, take it. If it constricts, wait or renegotiate it. Financial and practical concerns are often the loudest tests. Honor the material while refusing to collapse into fear. You are invited to steward resources with the increased clarity you are cultivating, not to gamble on vague promises, nor to freeze into conservative paralysis. Make budgets, yes, but also allow for curious experiments that cost little but teach much. A class, a short consultation, a morning retreat. Small investments in clarity often yield disproportionate returns in confidence. When it comes to work or career transitions, translate inner shifts into incremental experiments. You might not need to resign or pivot overnight. Instead, carve space for exploratory projects that describe the life you imagine. Draft an outline for a passion project. Offer your time for a small collaboration that stretches you. Teach one workshop. Write one article. Test one offer. These experiments serve as evidence. They show you and the field what is possible without risking the container you still rely on. Cultivate a practice of honoring the parts of you that resist. Resistance is not an enemy, it is a guardian that wants to be seen. When the old identity protests, ask it what it fears losing. Listen. The answers are often tender: security, belonging, a known story. Speak to those fears with kindness. Acknowledge what was true about your past roles. Then remind yourself of the new capacities you are acquiring. Integration happens when you can hold both the old gratitude and the new longing simultaneously. Learn the grammar of synchronicity with both faithfulness and skepticism. Synchronicities are signposts, not dogmas. When a pattern repeats, test its resonance by asking simple, pragmatic questions. Does this alignment invite me to expand? Does it require me to compromise my integrity? If the answer nudges toward expansion without sellout, explore. If the pattern feels like an old familiar in new clothing, something seductive because it seems like an easy win, pause and consult your inner authority. When acceleration arrives, treat it as you would a rapid current. You want to move with it without being swept into old reactivity. Pause more often than you think necessary. That pause is not slowness, it is the centering that allows momentum to be usable. Decide in the small. Prioritize what actually requires your energy. Delegate, refuse, or postpone the rest. A lot of outward speed will seek to make you prove yourself. Your job is to prove your fidelity to truth, not to the appearance of success. There will be moments when people question your choices. Friends who worry, family members who press, colleagues who misread your changing boundaries. Answer with the tone you want to cultivate. Measured, clear, kind. A statement like, "I'm exploring a different tempo right now," conveys enough without opening a negotiation. You do not need to convert anyone to your path. Your steadiness is persuasive in itself. Do not underestimate the power of ritualized endings. When an old role falls away, a relationship, a job, a long-held identity, create a small ceremony to mark it. It need not be dramatic. Burn a list of expectations you no longer carry. Walk to a threshold and look back with gratitude. Read a letter aloud that names what the role taught you. Rituals function as psychological punctuation. They help your nervous system update and free up energy for the new narrative. Service and contribution will be natural companions to this work if you allow them. As your field rearranges, you will find moments to give from a place of overflow rather than deficit. Offer time, attention, or skill in a way that feels aligned. Service keeps you grounded in a larger story and prevents the work from becoming purely self-oriented. It need not be grand. A careful presence for one person is as transformative as any public act. Be vigilant against spiritual bypassing. There will be a temptation to reframe every wound as a lesson in cosmic timing. While reframing can be a skillful tool, it should not replace excavation. Engage the difficult work of integration, therapy, honest conversations, grief work when it calls. Spiritual sensitivity without integration can produce charisma without depth. Depth is earned in the quiet labor of facing pain with tender courage. Develop a modest practice for tracking the quality of alignment. Once a week, rate yourself on 3 axes: clarity, courage, and ease. Clarity is how well you can name what you want. Courage is how often you act in small ways that honor that clarity. Ease measures how much friction you feel in moving toward your inner yes. Over time, you will see shifts across these axes. Celebrate progress that is internal rather than external. When you encounter setbacks, treat them as recalibration points, not as verdicts. A setback is data. It tells you where the field resisted, where the old timeline still had purchase. Instead of spiraling into self-judgment, ask, what did this teach me? About timing, capacity, or boundary? How can I respond differently with the new information? Often the wisest next step is a compassionate, practical adjustment. A conversation, a slower pace, a pause for rest. Invite your future self into specific conversations. A simple script can be returned to. Future me, what small, visible step can I take this week that honors our coherence? Let the answer be small. The future self tends not to demand spectacle. It nudges for consistent integrity. Do that small thing and notice the difference in tone it creates inside you. As you practice these ways of moving, you will create a new taste. Instead of chasing intensity, you will prefer clarity. Instead of proving, you will prefer showing up. The new timeline is less about dramatic reinvention and more about fidelity to incremental truth. When your life begins to reflect this taste, you will feel less like you are chasing an idea and more like you are returning to yourself. There are technical practices you can adopt to speed the nervous system's familiarity with alignment. Heart-focused breathing is one such tool. Inhale gently for a count of 5, exhale for a count of 5, and imagine the breath moving through the chest center. After several cycles, bring to mind a memory of ease, a moment when you felt neither anxious nor defensive. Hold that memory for a breath or two and let it color the field. This practice recalibrates the autonomic nervous system and makes it easier to hear subtler guidance. Another practice is the micro-decision test. When faced with a choice, pick something inconsequential and follow your first inner yes, what you would do if you were already your future self. Notice how that small alignment changes hard decisions later. This trains you to trust embodied yeses in low-stakes situations so you are not paralyzed when the stakes are higher. Use language to make interior shifts tangible. Replace abstract vows with concrete commitments. Instead of, I want to be more present, say, I will put my phone face down for 30 minutes after dinner. Instead of, I want clarity, say, I will write 3 sentences each morning about what I want to stop doing this month. Language anchors intention into behavior. Protect your solitude fiercely. Solitude in this phase is not loneliness, it is rehearsal. Schedule regular windows where you are unavailable, not as a punishment to others, but as a devotion to your internal reorganization. In those windows, do small things that replenish. Walk a circuit, water a plant, stare at the sky. The world will keep moving without you for brief sanctuaries of recalibration. When the outer world accelerates, set at least one practical rule to buffer reactive choices. Wait 48 hours before making any decision that materially alters your life, financially, relationally, or geographically, unless immediate action is required for safety. Use that buffer to consult your inner authority, to sleep on it, and to test the clarity that longevities need. This is not avoidance, it is prudence married to sensitivity. Honor the paradox that choice and surrender coexist. You are choosing to walk into a new reality, and you are surrendering to what wants to form in you. Both are acts of courage. Practice saying both sentences aloud. I choose this, and then I allow what wants to be. The combination keeps you active and receptive. Be patient with your language. The stories you tell about yourself are the scaffolding for action. Replace absolute identities, I am a failure, I am stuck, with provisional narratives that reflect growth. I am learning a new way. I am practicing different responses. Words shape the field. Softening categorical statements opens the possibility of novelty. Share your thresholds selectively. There will be people who deeply want to support you and others who will misinterpret your changes. Learn to choose confidants who are patient, who can sit with nuance, and who are willing to hold both your fear and your courage without prescribing the next move. Build a small council of trusted witnesses, 1 or 2 people who can mirror your movement without making it about themselves. When a pattern of resistance repeats, old defenses, familiar stories, ask for a micro-experiment. A micro-experiment is a low-cost test designed to reveal new data. If your pattern is avoiding conflict, experiment with a 10-minute honest conversation about a relatively safe topic. If your pattern is overworking, experiment with 1 afternoon of complete rest. Observe the results with curiosity. Experiments teach faster than resolutions because they produce real feedback. Notice how joy alters the field. Joy is not frivolous, it is an accelerant for alignment. Seek practices that create surprise and laughter, not as distractions from seriousness, but as energetic clears. A small burst of play changes chemistry. Remember the childlike parts of you that were not strategic. Invite them to move in ways that do not require usefulness. Play is not opposite to progress, it is part of integration. Keep returning to the simple posture: attention, curiosity, small action. Those 3 together produce rhythm. Rhythm dwarfs willpower over time. 1 small aligned action, repeated, becomes muscle memory for your new life. There will be a final test before deeper stabilization, a mirror event. Something in the world will rearrange in a way that asks you to prove the internal change you claim. It may be as ordinary as a conversation that goes sideways, or as significant as a sudden choice point about a relationship or job. When the mirror event arrives, apply the criteria you cultivated. Body, yes. Integrity, check. Small step. Buffer if needed. Your past self used to panic. Your future self responds with measured curiosity. Prepare for the quiet season that follows acceleration. The field will not remain on high alert indefinitely. After a period of fitting together, you will enter a calmer phase where choices require less wrestling. Use that quiet to deepen skillful practices. Longer retreats, study, mentorship, creative experiments that do not demand immediate outcomes. Quiet is where depth grows. Remember, you were chosen to know, not because you are special in a competitive sense, but because willingness opened a door. That willingness is a tender capacity. It tolerates uncertainty, it chooses integrity, and it practices small acts of courage. Keep giving it the small daily nourishment it needs. Now comes a short anchor, a simple, portable ritual to mark your intention. Do this in a way that suits privacy and safety. Standing, sitting, or lying down is all fine. Place a hand over your heart. Breathe slowly and deliberately 3 times. On the 3rd exhale, say aloud or silently in present tense, I step into the reality that was waiting for me. Pause and feel the phrase land. Notice what happens behind the ribs, in the throat, in the back of your eyes. Allow whatever arises, calm, tears, a small smile, to be part of the moment. If you wish, repeat the phrase 2 more times, letting each repetition be softer and more grounded. This is symbolic. It is not a spell. It is a public note to the parts of you learning new grammar. It clarifies orientation. After the words, pick 1 tiny outward step you can take within 24 hours that aligns with that claim. An email, a short walk, a conversation, a page of writing. The action does not have to be dramatic. It simply needs to be a test of alignment, something you would do if the claim were true. If you want to share the declaration with others, you may type the phrase in the comments as an optional ritual of accountability. Do so only if it feels honest and not performative. If you prefer privacy, whisper it to yourself in the car or write it on a small card and keep it somewhere visible. The symbolic act matters because it helps your nervous system translate intention into habit. As you move forward, tend the threefold practice. Notice, choose, act. Notice the subtle shifts in your sensations. Choose with integrity. Act with small, consistent steps. Over time, the old timeline's tug diminishes and the new arrangement acquires a comfortable rhythm. You are not being excused from difficulty. There will be days that require endurance, conversations that require courage, and inner work that feels endless. The difference is this: you now have a map and a method. You can see the erosion as purification. You can treat the void as fertile. You can hear the future self and respond with integrity. These capacities will not make life always easy, but they will make it truer. Keep steady faith in the process without confusing faith for certainty. Faith here is a posture. It is willingness to continue when vision is partial and to act when proof is preliminary. It is a long patience toward a life that matches your deepest voice. You were chosen to know first so you could move with less harm and more clarity. That choice is a responsibility that glows softly, not like a command, but like a lamp you carry through unfamiliar rooms. Use it, tend it, protect it, let it guide you. When the world rearranges, let your steadiness be the silent instruction it needed. Now, take one more breath where you feel the title settle in your bones. If you're seeing this, your soul is done with the old timeline. Let that sentence be both truth and invitation. If it resonates, declare once more, out loud or within, those simple words. I step into the reality that was waiting for me. Step forward with gentleness. Step forward with resolve. The new timeline is not a finish line to reach, but a way of being to practice. Your task is not to prove anything to anyone. It is to be faithful to the small, honest things you can do today. You were chosen to know. Now move with the wisdom that this knowing gives you. Your soul is done with the old timeline. Walk into the next chapter with hands open, feet steady, and a clear, soft yes in your chest.